Okay, so we're kind of running short on time, so we'll go a little faster. I'm going to start by quickly making a new document. Now, there's a couple of things that I like to do when I work in InDesign, and that is I like to first off set up my workspace. So I always go up to Window, Workspace, and you have these kind of preset ones here. I just picked the stuff that I use the most. In this case, I'm using all these things, so I set that up and just create a new workspace. Now, in some cases, you'll hit a quick key or you're by accident hit one of these bad boys, and it gives you your own special workspace. What you'll notice is that you're actually missing some stuff. Your pull down menus are actually kind of short. You click down on here, you see show all menu items and stuff pops up. Now, this happens a good amount sometimes that for some reason you hit a workspace and then all your stuff just kind of disappears and some people don't know to click on this little menu. So if that happens, you feel like I could have sworn that there was more stuff under the edit menu. I would just go down there and you'll see it all. So I'll go back to my workspace and I'll activate mine. Another change that I make a lot is in preferences, and this is where you actually go and if you're working in millimeters, this is where you'll change that. And if you change this without a document open, it'll keep that change. Change it, then quit it. It'll actually keep it because I know sometimes some of these documents they default to millimeters or centimeters or whatever. So if you always want to go to inches, that's how you do it. Units and increments, I always change my tracking to 1 right here. It defaults to 20, and that's because when I kern, I use the quick keys, and I'm gonna give you guys this little box that I actually have printed out upstairs. I'll cut them out for you, and I kind of keep that close to my computer. That way, you always know the quick keys for kerning and tracking. But I always change it to 1.
How do you keep that always at one? Because there's times that I put at one and then it'll just reset back to 20 again.
It does that. I think that's where you have to close the document whenever you don't have a document open. So if I close this and then I adjust my preferences, that's how it keeps it.
All right.
And then you have to quit because if you crash, it loses and it goes default again.
You're recording this, right?
Yes.
All right. I don't want to
And
take
also,
it.
now you can change the standard 2 points and 2 points and size on leading because it's easier, to control with the keys. The
Yes.
size of the copy and the leading, it's 1 point by 1 point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of keeping the two.
All those changes as you're going through, you're gonna realize that some stuff you just work better. Changing small little things here and there, like here, like Bobadilla says. So you have to just get used to it. Don't be afraid about changing stuff in preferences. A lot of people don't want to change anything, and then they end up working double. So feel free to change whatever you feel necessary. If you could always go back to default if you feel you mess something up. Right. So quickly, let's go over some of the stuff that's kind of new in InDesign, and with CS4, and I'm sure CS5 is gonna have some really cool stuff too. But um, I'm gonna just quickly go over some of the palettes that I use the most. So I just made these boxes fairly quickly. I hit Option and you can drag duplicate. I'm going to go to Pathfind Align, and I use this a lot. The Align objects, and this is how you just kind of line everything up. Distribute, I lose a lot as well. If you click off the use spacing, it just figures out the correct spacing and just kind of averages it between all of them. If I want to use a specific amount, I could just stick that in here and distribute the spacing with a specific amount. These are aligned to selection. I could align to page, and that will center all of them in the middle of the page, in the middle horizontally, and this one does it vertically. So you could change these things to align to different things. As I'm working, something that's new to CS4 is something called smart guides, and you can see how these guides kind of come up as I'm moving over to the side. And you see those arrows that come up? That's telling me that now there's equal distance spacing between these two. So it knows that I probably want to set it up like that, and it will just figure it out. So it takes some getting used to, but after a while, these smart guides are perfect. It anticipates where you want it to go. And then as you're laying out copy, it will tell you, well, this is the center point, so it picks these align points, so it's just easier to align your work. Now, working with copy, I pretty much always just immediately go to optical with the kerning, just because it does just a little bit better job than metrics. Now, when you're working on copy, a few of you have kind of noticed this already. I'm very particular, and I like my copy kerned really well. I think that's a lost art in graphic design, and people just kind of just do whatever comes up on the computer, but the computer doesn't kern by itself. So I'll this is where the quick key changes come in, and if you get these quick keys and you set them up the way you want them, it makes kerning a lot faster, and you can go through it. I can kern this copy much faster than if I went over here and changed these little numbers over and over and over again. So get familiar with the quick keys and copy, because this is something that I'm a stickler for and Rafa's a stickler for. So you're gonna see us kind of marking up with little minuses and pluses all over the documents just a little bit more. So getting good with these with these quick keys. And another thing that we use a lot is whenever you need to line stuff up, when you're doing TV scripts and stuff like that, a lot of people would either space this out. Yeah, yeah,
I saw
very,
that this week.
Yeah.
I don't
very,
know what I'm talking about.
very annoying. Just click in front of the T and Apple backslash, and that will align it. It's called the align to, and it aligns it right to it. You could also use you could use tabs, but to do the tabs, you kind of have to set them up because that doesn't really align just right. You'd have to actually go here and set them up. And tabs have their uses, but for the most part, I can pretty much do everything I need to do by just clicking Apple backslash align to.
And also to add, if you have a hard return after the first line, it won't work.
Yeah, so right here, like this is a soft return, and I press shift return to actually knock it over to the next line. If I hit enter, it goes right back. The reason for that is that I have this lined up here, then I go to enter, then I go to number 2, and then it works just fine. It doesn't affect it. So it only affects the soft returns.
You can see this on the hidden characters.
Wait,
Yeah.
can you show that
Problems
again?
it shows all the little.
Yeah, where am I hidden?
Can I-
Command I.
It's on- It's on the
No.
top.
Oh,
Apple actually.
Yeah.
Apple I. No, shift
Shift
option
option
Apple I, shift T. That's the align to, and you can see it right there. Just kind of the little cross. I didn't know it was a cross, but there you have it. That's a soft return. That's a hard return. So this is one of the I love the align to. It's something very simple, but it's awesome. Something else that InDesign has that other programs don't really keep in mind is the story feature. The story's awesome because in typography you always hang quotations, but it's gotten to the point now that people just don't because the computer doesn't do it. The story feature actually lets you hang some of your punctuation so it looks typographically correct, because usually people just kind of leave it just kind of in like that, and that's actually not accurate. Some people would even do it more so, and actually get it, line it up completely. So it really depends on how much you want to do it. But almost always, I always put my story on because I want my periods to hang out a little bit. I want the edge of the T's to kind of go out a little bit more because that's just little touches, but it goes a long way. Also, there's just amazing things in the type pull down. Glyphs is something I use all the time. If you guys remember from back in the days, pop chart and keycaps in Max. This is where you go if you need something from Zoff Dingbats or Wingdings. You click here and it has everything you need. You double click and it comes out right there. So this is where you would go for any of your alternates, your swatches, your any of the accents or the etnias that you need. If you don't know where they are, this is where you want to go to grab them. Your umlauts. Exactly right. Also, we have under the type, you have insert special characters, and this has pretty much everything, just all the random stuff you need is right in here. You know, you need the copyright symbol, all this other stuff. I mean, inside here you have just all kinds of crazy things that usually you forget that you even need. So this is the special character is really where you want to go to grab any of that stuff. Also, InDesign has really cool. It has Greeking built right in, so you could placeholder text. All right, now I'm gonna get right into to building one of these files. I grabbed the Dell Fanaticos agency poster, and what I noticed when I opened this up was that this is one PSD, which I don't really like working in PSDs. I try to avoid it as much as possible. So I'm going to show you guys just kind of how I would rebuild this using InDesign to make my life just a little bit easier. And I'll start off by using my layers palette, if I can find it. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is actually I want to bring in the background image. And I have that already. I actually went in and I actually broke up the file so I can actually separate things a little bit better. I want to make a new layer, and I want to move this actually to this layer. So since I have this little box, I'll just move that right up. And I'll move this right behind. Then I'll lock that because I don't have to use that anymore right now. And I want to bring in the
That'll move everything that's in that layer.
yeah, well no, whatever you selected. So I grab this will move just that over there. So yeah, that little box is awesome. Alright, so now I have this layer locked. Now I want to bring in the other picture. So you got Yelling Man. Place him right inside there. So now I have Yelling Man. So now I have the exact same thing that was done in the previous file in Photoshop. Now I just did it in InDesign. The reason for that is I just saved him. I put him on a transparent background because now I can move him around and do whatever I want without having to go into Photoshop. Now we finished this. Now that this happens in Dell, but let's say they want to make it transactional, and now they want to add
Let's pretend.
yeah, let's pretend that you know after this has been approved and it's worked on and in the next hour it has to be made a transactional ad. Okay, so now we have to completely change the way this thing looks, right? So I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. I'm gonna add a box here. Gonna fill it with Del Gray. I'm not quite sure who, not that I'm going to blame anybody, but all these logos are actually in InDesign, which are a very bad thing to do. But in the case of me, for my project, it actually worked out really well because I could just change this to a different color. So, but yeah, we want to make sure that we link whenever possible to stuff. So we don't, you can copy and paste from Illustrator, but you want to avoid that as much as possible. This has a multiply, so I'm going to take that off. So now I have my white little logo here on top of this gray. And I'm going to move.
Probably came from creative.
Probably came from creative. They always mess it up. Now I'm going to set up my file a little bit differently because what I want to do actually is I want to make a top layer. This is background. I'm going to make a middle layer. So on my top layer I want this stuff, this stuff. And I'm grabbing all this stuff. Okay, it's already on my top. This one I want to move to middle. Alright. Now I got all that stuff, and I got this bad boy right here that always will tuck in right behind. Now I want to add a laptop right here. So I'm going to come over here. I like to drag and drop as much as possible. So I'm going to grab these two files right here. It's the laptop shadow and laptop PSD, and bring it right in. For some reason, InDesign is really weird sometimes grabbing
Oh, bridge.
yeah, bridge. Let me grab this. So I have my little Alienware laptop here, but I actually want to add I have a drop shadow to it, so I'm gonna copy and paste in place. I'm gonna go to my links palette. I'm just gonna swap it out with the shadow. I'm gonna arrange, okay, center back, because I want my shadow one to be behind my Alienware laptop. Now I have this set up so I can make the change and kind of a little more flexibility. Now I want that shadow in the background to be multiplied. So I just clicked on it. You can see it's highlighted there. Go to Effects and click on Multiply. Because what I want to do is I actually want to put an image behind that screen. I don't want to do this in Photoshop. I could have done all this in Photoshop and then I have to build my entire ad in there. So what I'm doing is I'm using the effects in InDesign to be able to achieve things that I would traditionally only have been able to do in Photoshop, but keep it in InDesign and keep it so I can move stuff around. So I have my laptop. Let me make sure I keep these grouped. Now I have my laptop here that I can move around with the reflection and the shadow already built in. I want to add an image in the back. So I'll click the frame tool. Pull in there, and then I'm going to add my image. So now I have my smash face. Yes, that's what football's all about. Now I have my smash face image. I'm going to bring the whole laptop to the front. So now I've done what I would usually do in Photoshop. I was able to do it in InDesign without a problem, and now I can move things around, make it bigger or smaller, and even swap out the image in the inside.
So is there a mask on the screen?
On the screen, there are two PSDs. The first PSD is the computer. This computer is set on a transparent background with just transparency in the screen. The second one is the shadow layer, which I set to multiply so it's transparent. And on that layer, I actually have an inner shadow, which you can't really see here, but here over here on this, I actually put a small little inner shadow to kind of ground the image a little bit more into the laptop. And all that was done just using the effects in InDesign. So yeah, and I'm gonna put these files on the on the share so you guys can be able to see really how I built this. But all this is in InDesign now. So if anybody wants me to change stuff, move stuff around, it's very easy for me to do.
Yeah, that way the laptop on the server is the same one.
Exactly.
Not the same.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
what we've been doing is bring in the PSD, and if we gotta change the image, just use the object layers in InDesign.
Right.
Object layers, and then it
Turn
works
them
with
on and
Photoshop, turn on and off the screens.
Yeah,
The
it's like in
screen.
cases where like the screen is like
Yeah.
a black glossy
Yeah.
one, and we mask it, we put in a
Yeah.
mask
Like
layer
when-
with.
Will that put in like the Windows 7 screensaver?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
leave
I
it-
just leave my screens just clear. So I just have to bring an image and put it right behind it.
You make it white.
Clear, transparent, PSD. You just put it right behind, and you don't have to worry about it. You know, it's just a little bit easier. You know, and that way, you know, you could just you don't have to set it in Photoshop, and I could swap out the image very, very quickly.
Yeah,
Because object layers are cool, but they get messy, no?
Again,
Object layers are extremely
somebody
messy.
changes one,
Yeah.
I-
Well, it should,
yeah.
we try to keep it so that the black one, the original one is the one that
Mhm.
stays active, but people forget and activate, say
Yeah.
like the Windows 7 one, so whenever you put a file,
Hey,
it
don't know.
updates the image.
Yeah, I try not to. I'm a firm believer of just be as simple as possible. There's a lot of tricks and things you can do in InDesign, but that's just gonna complicate your life. You know, I keep it as simple as possible.
And then for distorting an image, like we could do it in InDesign, right?
Yes.
It's an angled computer. You just put that image behind.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, you actually not really know.
Because
No.
I guess that's what.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would just distort the image in Photoshop and maybe save it out, you know, or I mean, there's uses for Photoshop for sure. You know, this doesn't like me not to use it. So that's kind of how I would build this file. The plus to building a file like this is that now I can dupe this page. I could open up Bridge. I don't know if you guys use Bridge. I use Bridge all the time, and
I love Bridge.
you definitely wanna.
It is so.
Nobody likes Bridge. I don't know.
Here. Crashes
It
here.
doesn't suck, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I've done 14 catalogs using Bridge, man.
Let me tell you, the best way to work, if you want to work efficiently and you want to be as quick as possible and get your work done as correctly as possible, use Bridge. You know, because I'll grab this, I'll drag and drop it right in here, and I could just, I mean, it's just so much easier to do the work.
Yeah, but the thing is, like on our servers, we have like 300 pictures of whatever
Yeah,
Dell
yeah.
latitude.
Mhm.
It gets slow, it gets slow.
Every single.
And
Yes.
And it crashes sometimes when it loads. That's what we've had in the past.
Yes, I mean that could happen.
I'll defend Bridge till I die.
You know,
I love Bridge.
That could happen. Usually that means that you guys have a lot of other programs open.
Yeah.
You know, so I would close those programs. You know, if you don't need Photoshop, close it. That's a hog, right? If you know,
And your little DJ.
yeah. If you're, yeah. And Steve Jobs was right. If you have some Flash programs open that are hogging up your memory, close it. Yeah, Safari's a hog.
Safari's a hog.
There's a problem with the performance of the server.
We bought
You
it.
know, there's
Yeah,
a couple things that
for sure. I'm sure the server's slow.
And,
Yeah, the server.
Yeah.
And then not only that, for example, you have a PSD open and you wanna save it onto the server.
Surf videos.
Once you're done and it crashes.
Well, another thing you guys can do is if you use the same group of images, you could always make a library. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but I'm gonna make a library right now of these Dell images.
You did a library with the
Yeah, with like the
Dell
logo
We've got
and
a
the
lot
thing for it.
Yeah.
You know, logos and, you know, repetitive elements.
And like the Microsoft tagline.
Well, I mean, you could, yeah, for the Microsoft tagline, you could do it for a whole bunch of laptops.
What is that?
Yeah.
What is the library?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So
You just brought a PSD?
so what I'm doing right now is I'm grabbing stuff and I'm putting stuff into this library. Now what this does is that this library is now saved on my computer. So and see, I'm in a different document and I have all this stuff. So I just click it, drag and drop it, and put it right into my
And
document.
that palette always loads with every file, or does it?
Well, no, this palette now lives. This file now lives on my desktop. Yeah.
Let's say that the Dell logo was a link. It was a PSD link in the server, and somebody changes the color. You know, Dell wants to go orange.
This is still a link. If this was, in this case, this one isn't, but this one over here, this laptop, this is a link. So
It's just a link.
yeah, so this laptop, I come over here, I go over to links, and I hover and I click over here. I'll see where it is. This is on my. This is the same path. So I can make a library of stuff from the server and fill it up, and then I can email that library to everybody here. And when you click on it and you drag it to your computer like I did, it links to the server. It doesn't link to this
so if there
document.
any change, it's gonna be updated.
It'll
right
update
away.
it
It's like an
automatically.
alias.
Yeah.
Points
Cool.
to it.
Yeah. So this actually helps a lot. You know, so if you have a lot of images that you use on a regular basis, a lot of logos and stuff, this is perfect. You know, I would say make a library of it. Another great tool, and I'm gonna open up a document that I made earlier. Is well, this link palette is the newer link palette in CS4 is great because it gives you a lot of information about an image. You click down, you click on the more image, you'll find out everything: effective resolution, the scale, if there's a transparency on it, the color profile, the mode, everything comes out on there. Now, as you're working, a great tool is the pre-flight module. Because this pre-flight module, you can set, like I set a CMYK standard, and what I did was I made a profile. I went up to File, Define Profile, and I defined certain parameters. Like I wanted it to tell me if there's anything that's, since this is going to be a print ad that I'm releasing, I wanted to know if there's anything that's RGB or there's any spot colors. Where right off the bat, it tells me there's 3 color spaces that are a problem. Click over here, this del is actually a spot color. So okay, now I'll come over here, change this to process, click OK. Now the little icon's gone. Go back up to pre-flight. Now I only have one problem. That problem's been fixed. My next problem is that this is an RGB file. I'm gonna have to go into Photoshop and change that. Down here at the bottom, I set my resolution. I said, give me a call out if anything is below 300 dpi. And this is telling me that this file's effective resolution is 150, 167, 127. Now I know as I'm working that I'm gonna have to change all these things before I release. The reason this is powerful and this is good for what we do is that instead of waiting until you package to pre-flight, now you can set it constantly to pre-flight as you're working. So you don't have to wait to the very end when you're trying to get something out. You can actually come up with these problems throughout the day. So you're dropping this image in there. I know this is a high res that Art Buying gave me. Now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, but this guy's only 167. I need the photographer to give me a higher res image. This has to be at least 300. And this then you can ask, Jackie or Jesse earlier on as opposed to waiting till an hour before release.
You can access that pre-flight thing from that little red dot at the bottom where it tells you that.
Here, yes.
You can, okay.
This is an active pre-flight. So you can tell you don't even have to have it up here. It's right there. So already I got a red dot. I'm like, uh-oh. What's wrong now? And it'll pull up the panel and you can kind of just check all the stuff on the panel. Very it's a great tool. All right, now some of the kind of cooler things that CS5 has, that CS4 has, that probably have never used. I can I'm gonna grab a few of these links. I want to bring them all into InDesign. And you see my cursor's loaded. It has the little parentheses, a 6 in there. And what I want to do is I want to lay them out kind of in a contact sheet way. So I'm going to press Shift and Command, and I get this breakup here. All right, now let's say I want to add a little bit more boxes. I just hit the arrows, and that gives me more rows, and this gives me more columns. All right. Once I let go, it just sticks them all in there. So really cool little, cool thing, to make, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use this to make contact sheets. You can use Bridge for that. But as far as if you're going to load stuff up in a grid, the best way to do it. You just have to get used to using the arrows to add and take away columns. Yeah. And another cool thing that InDesign has that I haven't really used too much, but is the power zoom. And this, you click spacebar, you get the hand tool, then you click and hold the mouse, and then all of a sudden it gives you that little icon. Well, now I could use my arrow keys and it'll zoom in. Then I click and hold again and it'll zoom out. Come over here and it'll zoom back into to the same view level.
That red box is turning.
That red box is your how much you want to zoom in. Zoom back out, and I can come over here. Again, one of those things that just adds a little nicer touch to InDesign, just kind of how you work. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this. I mean, I'm sure you guys probably have played with it a little bit, but now InDesign gives you the ability to rotate the spread view. So if you were working on something that, you know, a direct mail that you built up and it was horizontal, but some elements, only the coupon's horizontal, all the rest of them are vertical, and you just wanted to work on that, you didn't want to have to turn your head, this actually turns it. Now this is just the view. It doesn't turn the document, it's just the view. So now you can work on it, you know, make your changes, and then come back over here and reset clear the rotation. Again, this doesn't alter your orientation at all. You know, I could have. Let's see, does it work here? See, this one's still vertical. This one's just flipped on its side. Yeah, it's just it's great for quick. I mean, I used to do this all the time. I used to use direct mail pieces, and just that one thing was over, and I just like changing the shit. You know, or I'd rotate it and then rotate it back. You know, but then it's you don't want to alter it too much. You know. Photoshop does the same thing. Photoshop, you can actually rotate the entire canvas, which is just kind of wild. So that's a cool little cool little feature of InDesign. Yeah,
I
right.
have a monitor that you can flip it.
I did too.
Yeah, so
It's cool.
it's really cool.
If you could, yeah. So and for get in with master pages a little bit, I'm gonna pull this down here. Master pages, you can't really get at anything because it's all locked. There's a couple ways to get around it. You can control click here and override all master page items, or you can just Apple command the thing you want to change. So in this case, I want to change this guy, so I Apple command that. Come over here. I want to replace them with, let's say I want to replace them with this one right here, and just drag and drop it right in here. Now this is what makes InDesign so much easier to use as opposed to doing these layouts the way they were done originally in Photoshop. Is that I could just do it once, right? Alter it and just alter it once. I want to change the color of this. I'll just change it right here, and then it will update on my pages. So trying to work as smart as possible using master pages, using layers, and is really the best way to go. And there's a lot of stuff that InDesign does that takes away a lot of the burden from what you would usually have to do in Photoshop. So it's very important to try to use Photoshop and InDesign as closely as possible. Like when I did this, I went into Photoshop and I used the same method I showed you guys on the Photoshop class to clip out the hair. I did all that. I set it on a transparent background, and I just kept everything on a transparent background. And I'll show you a little bit about that on the actually on this laptop, because this is actually something that comes in insanely handy. Thanks, palette. I'm gonna open this up. I usually control click so I could edit, so I can choose what I can edit with. If not, if you sometimes just, this button sometimes opens it in Photoshop, sometimes opens it in preview, which is a pain in the butt, especially if it's one of those big files and it just opens up and you're like, oh, preview, I hate preview.
You can change that on the
Yeah.
get info box.
In the preferences?
In the preferences, in the get info box, you can tell
When you
which
open.
document you can open. I want to open this kind of document
Yeah.
with this program.
It's just the JPEGs that sometimes kind of mess
No,
up.
even
Sometimes
the
you,
PSDs on the network will default back.
Yeah.
If you say open.
Yeah.
because
it
sometimes
opens
I
up
want
the- it
JPEGs to
opens up.
open
Why
and
does
preview, but not the
preview?
big JPEGs. So just to kind of show you what I did with this laptop to get it ready to actually work in InDesign, is I grabbed the file and I just split it in two. I grabbed the laptop file and pull it into a different document, and I grab the shadow file and I pull into a separate document. There's nothing too different about that. I usually work in PSDs. I don't work in TIFFs or EPSs because PSDs are a little bit smaller and it keeps the transparency. Although TIFFs keep transparency too, but PSDs are usually just a little bit smaller. So I usually keep that. Now, when you're sticking stuff into an InDesign file, there's a difference between like a more flat PSD and your working PSD. Like, I'm sure this laptop has a working PSD where you brighten up the reds and you all do all this photo retouching stuff. You don't want to go placing those PSDs in InDesign because you don't want to give those PSDs to a vendor. So usually what I do when all the retouching's done, that's my working PSD and that's fine. I usually make one that's a little more flat, so it's a little bit smaller, and that's the one I link stuff to. And if I have to make a change, I'll make a change in the working PSD and just replace this one. Just because some of these can get really,
more
really
flat, when you say more flat, it's flatten out the layers?
big. Flatten out the layers,
Wow.
yeah. Flatten out the layers so you don't have all the color corrections. I think this particular file had a lot of color corrections. And just to show you, this is the original file. What I did was I just turned these off, saved this out, and then I turned this one off, turned these on, and saved that out. That's how I split up the PSD. Any questions so far on anything that I've shown? You guys kind of so far so good. Another really cool tool is the under output separations preview. Don't know if you guys used this before, but I use it a lot when I'm getting ready to release stuff. I want to see first off, kind of how things are separating to make sure that the right things are being multiplied and the right colors are being spread out. So this is instead of printing out separations from the printer, which are very important when you're releasing stuff. This is just a quick way to do it here. If this was still, actually let me change it here. I believe this is the blue, right? This is a spot. On separations preview, another way to pre-flight, I would have noticed that I had a spot color on here. So that's another reason to go through as just a matter of course before you release something. Just open up the preview, the separations preview, and just cycle through, just to make sure you don't have any spot colors where you shouldn't have spot colors. Also, they have ink limit. Ink limit is very important if you guys are releasing stuff for pubs. And what I'm telling you here is that let me know if anything that's over 300% ink limit, because I don't want anything over that. If I get stuff that's over 300% ink limit, what's gonna happen is that when this hits the pub, everything that's red is gonna gain even more. So it's gonna get even darker and darker and darker. So what's gonna happen here is that his hair is gonna plug up, his mouth's gonna plug up, these chains over here, they're all gonna plug up, and his forearm's gonna plug. So that immediately tells me that these blacks are too black. For a magazine, this is actually going to a magazine, I have to dial those down because you want your total ink limit to be under 300. Because if not, it just goes, and if in newspaper, it's like 250 or something like that. Because remember, this is going on a rag sheet, it's going to soak up. So it's important that you guys actually take this into account when you're working, because although it looks good on a proof and it looks good on screen, once it hits the pub and you guys see it in Maxim or whatever magazine you guys are running in, it's gonna look pretty shitty. So if you guys are running stuff to a newspaper, you guys or magazines, you really want to check the ink limits on these things.
Where's that at again?
That's under separations preview.
How do you fix that?
Yeah, how-
Window
fix it.
output, right? Or view
Yeah, it's a window output. How you fix that? Fixing it is actually pretty easy. Go over to let's go to our links and we'll open up our yelling man.
It's a filter?
No, it's not a filter. It's good old fashioned. Yeah. No, high pass. Yeah. I'm gonna high pass them just because you guys like that so much. I just use the curve And I like, you click over here and you kind of see where you can activate it over here, and you move it over a little bit. I'm gonna pull up my
Like less black.
yeah, just move, and it's very subtle. Like over here, I have my hold on a second. I'm trying to get my info palette to show. As I roll over, you see it's 327. So
Where?
over here, my info palette, it's 327. It's now it's 340. You have the one before the slash. That's what it is. The one after the slash is what after I've changed it. So you just kind of move the slider a little bit, and you start affecting the area. You don't want to affect some of the stuff too much, so you pull some of this stuff down a little bit.
But now you gotta
This
do it
one.
with Cass telling you, hurry up.
Hurry
Hurry up.
So
Gotta release, gotta release.
And does that affect the whole image in a sense?
that affects the way I'm doing it right now. Does you can actually raise it up a little bit here, and you can make it so it doesn't really affect too much. See, right now I have 342, and now I have 328, so I can move this down a little bit more. But this is where it's important as you do it. Yeah, you kind of have to work it. I'm not getting into Photoshop right now with how to do it, but that's kind of how you would start getting at it. And you kind of want to make it look like art directors especially like it to look really good on screen. It's like, oh, it looks nice, it looks dark, it's rich. But you're never going to see it on screen again. Unless it's for, web, you got to think, how will this print? And that's where looking at those things and looking at those ink limits. Because if I have something that's his whole hair is going to go just jet black. And it's just going to plug up and it won't look good at all. So that's where, especially for like newspaper, for instance, this image for newspapers, actually a fairly easy fix. I just assign the profile, and there's an easy profile. It's a Japanese newspaper profile, and that does a really good job of bringing down the colors to the point that it looks almost desaturated and kind of wrong, because when that hits the paper, it will look right. So that's something that we're gonna have to work on, I think, as a group, and working with art directors. It's like, yeah, I know this proof looks great, yeah, but you're never gonna use a shiny match print proof. That's not how you're using it. You have to actually set it up to where it looks kind of dull on screen, because it's gonna gain. Yeah, almost a little washed out.
And plus, whenever you start printing work, man, I never saw a newspaper ad.
Yeah.
We get like a sample 8 months later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help much.
Yeah.
So what's the ink levels now on the red? Or you didn't make
I didn't save it. But actually, it's funny because as I was going through it, I noticed that we do have those ink levels. But if I would have saved the file I had, this would have disappeared. And in some cases, for some things, you can actually change it. Like if this was newspaper, I do 280, and it'll give me the would tell me, okay, for a newspaper, you're not going to see this keyboard. That keyboard's going to disappear once it hits the paper. So just again, it's a little more information. InDesign's really good at sharing all this information with you. So you just have to kind of just know where to look for it. So that's pretty much it for InDesign. Actually, I'm going to just show you this just because I think it's cool and I've used it a few times. I don't know if you guys ever used the gradient feather, but it's crazy interesting because you can actually do gradient effects, which you would usually have to take this into Photoshop for. But it does really cool, if you wanted to do, maybe do one of these reflections of the copy, for instance. thing and do the zoom in. Sorry. So I could do one of those, you know, kind of effects.
Does it have the same palette it had in 3, where you can like mess with the little gradient triangles? Does Cool get more of it, or is it like more?
On this one?
Yeah, on 4, is it, or does it have it on top palette?
Yeah, no, I'd never actually mess with this gradient in here. I just go back in there and just
Yeah, because like double clicking on it, on the effect, like gives you
over here.
Oh, yeah, you could do
yeah,
like
double click on the
adjustments.
effect,
Yeah.
gives you, like,
Oh,
more-
over here. Yeah, you could actually do
that's
the
cool, so-
you could do
That's
the
just the
gradient.
next
I
guy.
know they changed it, I'm like,
Fucking
oh,
Laz,
That's
man.
the next class.
Laz is taking care of business. You're doing InDesign. You're doing InDesign too, buddy.
Advanced.
But little things like that. I mean, especially from an art director point of view, or from someone who's doing some quick comps, like this kind of stuff. You know, if you very quickly want to achieve an effect, InDesign's really good at doing that. You know, you can actually, you know, very quickly comp stuff in there just to kind of see how it would look. You know, so it's a, you know, the effects palette is insanely powerful. I would say just caution using it. You know, for the most part, use Photoshop when you should use Photoshop. You know, if you're doing a lot of image stuff, you know, just effects, try to do most of them in Photoshop, and then bring in a layered transparency PSD, drop it in there. That's just the easiest way to do it. Because you start putting too many effects in InDesign, it starts crashing when it rips. It starts getting really weird PDFs, and that's when you kind of start having issues. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
So that-